Okay, so we have me here at the beautiful gardens at CSULB to tell you about the so-called love hormone oxytocin that, as I have said, underlies social bonds. So in this course, excuse me, in this course, we have a rather unconventional final exam. And that is, you are asked to do a neuroscience puppet show. Do not worry, it is a weird exam, but it is a good one. And as I've said before, having weird teachers builds character. So, Irving was bold enough to give us a context, an example puppet show to use as a class, as a thought experiment last time. And he gave us the context of a date. And he specifically said he's a positive individual. He wants to think about a good date. So, we are going to imagine Irving on a good date, and we're going to talk about what would have been going on in Irving's mind? What chemical soup was his brain bathing in that made this particular date good? And oxytocin is, of course, going to come into play, as well as our other neurohormones or neurotransmitters. So, if you were with me as we studied dopamine, endorphin, and serotonin, some of what I've got to say about how those neurotransmitters affect us in romantic relationships should be good review for you to see if you are keeping up with me so far. Okay, so this is your brain on love. And we're going to start with a context of infatuation. And let's use Irving's example that he was so brave as to give us. One thing we've been talking about in this course, because we will not attain our goal of connecting society and synapse and understanding the richness that makes us who we are without understanding trauma and violence. So we did hear from an individual, Deshay, who spoke on his own condition, antisocial personality disorder. And I presented this interview because Deshay was so, first of all, brave because it is a highly stigmatized condition and also very self-aware, and there was um, a chilling quality to the way he spoke about his capacity for manipulation. He said, when I see an individual who has traits I want, I will manipulate them. It's not that he could, it's that he will. And that sense, that Deshay brought so vividly to life by sharing his case of prey it was spooky. A happy October, happy spooky season. Okay, but let's say that Irving does desire, and not in a creepy way. Irving, in a neurotypical, beautiful way, does desire this woman that he's on a date with. She has, to put it as Deshay did, qualities that he wants. So this kind of hot green shirt that she's got going on and the way her Pepto-Bismol pink skin matches her weird little socks. These are qualities Irving wants. So he is pumped about being on this date. Furthermore, he has been thinking about it all day. He is euphoric, guys. He's looking good. He's feeling good. So this is Irving infatuated with his new date, Irvette, we'll call her. And what do we know his brain is full of as he feels that euphoria, that draw, that motivation, that drive, this new date energy, if you will? What is Irving full of? That's right, dopamine. We have called dopamine, it's one of our happiness chemicals. We've called it the confidence chemical. The motivation molecule, I think, is the best because confidence is also highly associated with serotonin. But so this motivation molecule is obviously flowing in Irving as he heads into this date context. So if you're telling a similar story about yourself, and it might be on a romantic date, or it could be some other context where you want to be at your best. Like me, when I travel for this family funeral over the weekend, I'm going to want to be at my best. and I will want my dopamine flowing. So I've already broken my tasks that I can do to help into steps and all the other things that we talked about that you can do to get dopamine, this happiness boosting motivation molecule flowing for yourself. Okay, so Irving's infatuated with his date, Irvette. What else is going on? Well, Irving mentioned the butterflies. And when we studied our case study of SM, the woman who was unable to feel fear because Urbach vitae disease had calcified and destroyed her amygdala. The idea of dating was mentioned, the idea that you should feel some sort of butterflies on a first date is something that you guys said as to why you wouldn't want to choose SM's life and become a woman without fear. You thought it would take away a little of the fun in life. And it is true that on his way to his date, Irving would be full of cortisol. Now, hopefully not so full of cortisol that he's sick to his stomach and he's sweating through his cool shirt that I am confident he would have worn on this date or whatever else could be going on if we find ourselves in a cycle of high fight, flight, freeze. But yeah, a date's a consequential event. We all want that meet cute. We all want that somebody. So you should have some adrenaline going. And that is going to have some effects on your brain and body. Adrenaline is another neurohormone, so it has powerful effects. It's going to increase your blood pressure. It's going to decrease your sensitivity to pain. So you may be temporarily more willing to endure things with or for this romantic partner that you wouldn't ordinarily be interested in. It's going to give you heightened powers of memory and attention. So I don't necessarily remember the day that I saw my husband, but to think of a different crush, yes, yes, I can remember the beautiful lines of my crush's face and the soft, pillowy lips. Yeah, because I had that heightened power of memory and attention on that day. And an increase in blood sugar, and those work together to sort of supercharge you to have a kind of a canon event memory moment where you are very focused on the date, and you're feeling that euphoria, and this may well be a story that you're going to tell your grandchildren someday. Okay, so happiness chemicals are flowing. We've got the dopamine high. We've got the butterflies provided by a little positive endorphin. Remember, you're supposed to go through a couple of spikes of adrenaline every day. I should have said adrenaline, sorry. Okay, what else is happening in Irving's brain? And this is where I expect you to be surprised because I've been telling you about these happiness boosting chemicals, and one of them is actually not higher in a state of infatuation, and that is serotonin. So, when we are in the early phases of infatuation, serotonin actually decreases. And I've told you before that a decrease in serotonin is associated with what? What did Dr. Cook say? A decrease in serotonin for you on any individual day is associated with perhaps a little more irritability and aggression, and perhaps a little more anxiety and depression. So if you find yourself spiraling, do they really like me? Thinking all kinds of thoughts about the crush, that could be the low serotonin's effects. The disease obsessive compulsive disorder is also characterized by low serotonin. It is one of the class of anxiety disorders psychologists speak of. And if you find yourself obsessing and thinking again and again and about your crush, that might be that low serotonin state coming in to give you a little bit of anxiety, depression, nerves, and whatnot. So, hopefully, Irving said he was telling us a positive story. So let's assume that, the jitters didn't get to him too badly and he and his date had an incredible meet cute that his supercharged memory will ever forevermore he'll remember, the little white t-shirt that she wore on this adorable pumpkin patch date that I'm cooking up in my mind for Irving and Irvette. And they were both full of dopamine because they've been looking forward to this date all day, and because it's inherently rewarding to have a rich and deep conversation with a cool individual. And so they were filling each other with dopamine. Their serotonin got low. They wondered, am I good enough? Does he like me? What does this text mean? Their cortisol, though, was high, full of butterflies, their faces lighting up every time their phones make that little noise. That means your crush texted you. Um, we see some insecurity, reordering of priorities because of dopamine's power to harness attention and motivation, that elevated mood, that euphoria, the butterflies, some anxiety, a rush of energy, and a sharpening of focus. I have said before that while we can sort of hack the body because the fight, flight, freeze system is never on at the same time as rest and digest, there's actually one context where the fight, flight, freeze and rest and digest systems come on at once, and that is sex. And we could have a whole class about this. It's kind of a wonder that any of us are here. But if you think about the mix of feeling at ease and feeling excitement that makes for sex, yeah, it's a miracle we're here, but those two systems are capable of coming on at once. Okay, so and then sex is a huge producer of endorphins, the body's natural painkillers. And remember, emotional pain and physical pain are not different as far as the brain is concerned. So when we have sex with someone, we are putting on rose-colored glasses. We are feeling no pain. We are setting ourselves up to view them through that rose-colored light. So, what is and we're also filling ourselves with oxytocin when we touch, when we cuddle, we are bonding, we are making ourselves more trusting and more generous, and we are changing forever how we see that person that we've chosen to engage in physically with that way. So, if you remember one thing from this lecture, is that you should spend your oxytocin wisely. Because once it is created, remember, it's a neurohormone, it is very strong. Okay, so Irving has created all of this wonderful oxytocin, dopamine, and cortisol with Irvette, his beautiful love. What can Irving and Irvette do to preserve this beautiful new love of theirs, and create the kind of long-term intimacy that families are based on? Because new love doesn't last forever. And in particular, the dopamine is eventually going to go down because dopamine is one reason Irving is filled with dopamine as he drives on his date to see Irvette is that she's new. So the human brain is hardwired to pursue novelty. So, what can we do once that novelty has worn off a little bit and dopamine is depleted? Because remember, as soon as we have attained and enjoyed our reward, as soon as Irving is there having that great conversation with Irvette, the dopamine is going to start to go down. It wants him back on an app, swiping, looking for some other girl in some other lime green t-shirt. So, what can Irving and Irvette do to keep dopamine flowing? Well, they can do stuff together. Dopamine is about motivation, and they can build towards long-term goals, whether that's seeing every national park, travel, whatever. They can also bring the thrill in a little bit by doing stuff that makes their dates more exciting, such as going to an axe throwing bar and getting a bunch of aggression out right before they turn around and smooch. You can probably think of other ways that they could add some thrill to their date. And those would be ways that they could kind of replace that missing dopamine And they're happy to have their serotonin back in place. No one wants to stay in that low serotonin state. And so they can use some thrill seeking and adventurous behavior together to replace the missing dopamine and continue to enjoy all of that rich oxytocin, which is going to make them trusting, make them generous, bond them with one another. It has a host of powerful effects throughout the brain and body. Having a romantic relationship is not the only way you can up your levels of this highly protective neurohormone today. And I want you to do this for yourself because one thing you'll learn about oxytocin just a little later in the lecture is that amongst its many superpowers, it actually protects us from stress. So I've been promising you that along with trauma and violence in society to synapse, we would talk about resilience. And I've already raised the issue that resilience should be conceived of as something that is available to us at the cultural level for the most part. We don't want to fall into the Western psychological trap of conceiving of things like resilience as individual traits when they may very well be community traits. However, there is one thing you can do to trick your brain chemistry, to mess with your mind in a productive way, to make yourself more resilient when you go through those hard times, those traumatic events that we know are coming for all of us. And that is to boost your oxytocin because oxytocin physically protects you from stress. And it does this by protecting the hippocampus directly. Remember, the hippocampus is involved in the body's stress response cycle. So the hippocampus is rich in receptors for stress hormones. And when our stress hormones pick up, then our hippocampus naturally says, hey, we've been stressed. It's time to engage, rest, and digest. It's time to downshift. It's time to put ourselves into a more positive space. And the hippocampus can't do that if it's damaged. So find your oxytocin when you're going through life's hard time. Touch, we have said, indulging in the senses in touch, in particularly touch and smell, aromatherapy. Playing with a dog. This is something that was so cute from the video lecture. When you cuddle and play with your dog, you're not just releasing oxytocin for yourself and getting that mood boost for yourself, you're giving oxytocin to your dog. Holding hands, all kinds of platonic friendship touch rituals from braiding hair to, whatever you might do together, including just sharing the details of your lives, can really boost your oxytocin on a day-to-day level. Doing good deeds for other people, thinking about your love, even if it's just the love for humanity that might make you want to participate in charity or something, is a wonderful way to boost your oxytocin. Um, uh, I think we might be done. Yeah. Yeah, that's the powerful, powerful love hormone, oxytocin. And I hope you find some ways to indulge in boosting your own oxytocin today, to regulate yourself. We all want regulated nervous systems. So, how is it that we can engage with those relationships, be they friendships, family, platonic relationships? Or romantic relationships that fill us with oxytocin, give us this access to this more open, trusting, generous version of ourselves. Um, yeah, so play with a pet, do something positive and get that oxytocin flowing for yourself today. Tend to those special relationships that always make you feel great. All right. And sorry for being late to class. Thanks.